At least 8 people were injured following Houthi missile strikes near Tel Aviv's largest airport on Sunday. To talk about this and much more is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, multiple international airlines have since canceled flights to Israel, but service is expected to resume today. Are there any, how is the Israel government responding to this, and are there any plans for retaliation?
Yes, so there has been unanimous consent across the board in the government in Israel, which never really happens. As you know, they have a very divided left and right, very much similar to the United States, actually. But in this case, there has been obviously an agreement that they have to step up the next phase of the war because this was, an attack that went too far. Obviously, Israel has a very robust defense apparatus across the board, right? Especially in terms of missile defense. And the Houthis have been relentless. So eventually one will get through, and that's exactly what happened in this case. And it was very close to and at Ben Gurion Airport. A lot of flights, as you mentioned, have been canceled. I know colleagues who actually were stuck there continue to be stuck there because they haven't found a flight back yet. But obviously, they're in a war, right? So these are all consequences to war. But I think in terms of Israel, they have announced as of over the weekend and this morning that there will be a new phase to this war. And that phase is meant to completely destroy Hamas and, of course, get the remaining hostages back, as many as can be that are alive. And obviously, the bodies to retrieve the bodies of those that have been killed in Hamas custody. So this is, it's something that we obviously wanted to see this war de-escalate, not escalate, but it continues to escalate. A year and a half into this war, we still have hostages. We have an American hostage that's still being held, and of course, there's so many different parts of this, different proxies that are all being supported by the Islamic Republic, the regime in Iran, and the Houthis being in Yemen, yet another front that they're fighting. So it's Hamas, it's Hezbollah, it's Palestinian Islamic Jihad, it's the Houthis in Yemen, and obviously insurgencies all throughout the Middle East. So this is exactly what Iran's regime wanted. They wanted to create this ring of fire around Israel, to surround Israel, to intimidate, to attack, to terrorize, and it's exactly what we're seeing play out.
And following the death and funeral of Pope Francis, his Pope Mobile, which is used to transport the pontiff around when he makes appearances, is being repurposed in Gaza. Now, this is the Holy Father's dying wish. Tell us more about what's being done with the Pope Mobile.
Yeah, very, very interesting to hear that this was what the Pope wanted. He wanted the Pope Mobile, which is, the what he kind of, it was created actually for him in the region to go around and be in. And he wanted to dedicate it to the people of Gaza. So it will be created, it will be transformed rather into a medic mobile to provide medical aid to the Gazan people. I think this is a huge honor for the people of Gaza to come from the Pope like this. But this is something that he spoke about a lot, for there to be peace in the Middle East. Obviously, something that's been going on since biblical times. But I think it's something he wanted to see in his lifetime, was peace throughout the Middle East. So this is something that's going to be dedicated to him. And hopefully it'll be a reminder to the people in the region and the Palestinian people and Hamas and everyone else that this is what we want to strive towards, is peace.
That's amazing. Now, a massive explosion that rocked a port in Iran exposed some deep vulnerabilities of the Islamic Republic's vital sectors as its concerns over internal unrest mount. Now, Lisa, I hear there are accusations that this was a civilian port being used to import explosives for the military.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions, more questions than answers, as we are, looking at these series of explosions inside Iran that have been the narrative that the government is pushing out, that these were earthquakes. These were natural explosions based on due to chemicals in these factories, and of course, those who know a bit more are saying, where are the aftershocks? Where are, we didn't see any, there's no notation or documentation of there being an earthquake. In terms of vulnerabilities, these ports do have very sensitive materials. Why? What were, how was it that these ports, had these kinds of catastrophes and there was nothing to safeguard against them? We had one last week and there were casualties. There were, and you want to talk about, the people of Iran. I want to start there. The people of Iran are very skeptical of everything that's going on. So they have a lot of questions for the government. What was this? Why weren't there any safeguards? And don't tell us it was, natural causes or earthquakes or things like that. We want answers. So whether it was an earthquake or it wasn't an earthquake, they want answers as to what this was and what caused it and what they will do to safeguard against these in the future.
And U.S. President Donald Trump says the U.S. could withdraw from peace talks with Russia and Ukraine. Now, Trump has cited, quote, tremendous hatred on both sides, and then said he may allow the countries to, quote, keep being stupid. Now, Lisa, you've discussed at length the senselessness of this war. So at this point, should anyone be surprised by this?
No, not at all. I mean, look, stopping this war and stopping all senseless wars was something that the Trump administration campaigned on, right? So we want to stop this war. We're going to stop the war between, the Palestinians and the Israelis. We're going to, curb Iran's regime. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So it was obviously on their list of deliverables, and obviously on the job, they realized that it's not as easy to deliver a ceasefire or truce between Russia and Ukraine. They've met separately. He believed, Trump believed that he could get them to kind of agree on, if he dealt with them separately, they would come to the table and agree. So what Marco Rubio said a couple of weeks ago was actually very smart. He said, we're not going to give the Russians forever. It's going to be a matter of days or weeks before we, basically call their bluff and say, we can't just keep having, what he said was, we can't keep having talks about having talks. We need to see some action. With the Ukrainians, I mean, we saw that explosive meeting between Zelensky and Trump in the Oval Office, which was horrific. We thought that was a no-starter at that point, but then we just saw in the last few days the minerals deal that was announced between the United States and Ukraine, which is a phenomenal deal in terms of getting a ceasefire in this war, because it creates an actual physical buffer between Russia and Ukraine. It also tells the Ukrainians and everyone else that the United States isn't writing blank checks. We're going to be paid back for all the money that we have spent in Ukraine. Makes it less of a senseless war for us in that regard. But when you look at the thousands of people that have been killed, if you look at the thousands of people who have been uprooted from their homes, lives destroyed, I mean, this has to end. There has to be some sort of off-ramp. And it seems like right now that ball is in Putin's court, and they are not going to wait forever in terms of the Trump administration's involvement. So that's why they're throwing their hands up basically as an ultimatum, or saying, this is it. This is your last chance to Putin and Zelensky to come to the table again.
And President Trump has rejected China's demand to lower the 145% tariffs to get them to the negotiating table. But Trump also said that he would lower them at some point. Now, he seems interested in eventually doing business with China. So why the delay?
Because he thinks that the consequences right now will cause China to want to compromise and come to some sort of consensus that the two countries can work together, because that is the goal. The goal is that Trump wants all countries to come and sit down with the United States and to have not no trade, but fair trade. And that is exactly the goal at the moment. He said, that this is devastating their economy. They're closing their factories, and it's really affecting them. So let this marinate, basically, and then we'll have, a China that perhaps wants to sit down and talk with the United States. Now, this is his calculus. Let's hope that is true, and the Chinese don't say, well, you know what, we don't want to talk to you after what you've done to us and what you're doing to us. We're just going to fight back. So we'll see how this all plays out, but in Trump's view, it's too soon to back down. He wants to work with the Chinese, but only, again, if that there's a fair way where it benefits both sides.
And the U.S. president has also shot down rumors that he will be seeking a third term as U.S. president, something that he could not constitutionally pursue anyway. So at this point, do we know who he is eyeing to be his successor?
Right. He mentioned his VP Vance, and obviously and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has run for office before and didn't make it past the primaries, in which Donald Trump won those primaries and won his first presidential election. What's interesting, and I'm very glad that he came out and said this, because the MAGA fever is really hot. Half the country loves this president. even some who voted for him previously did not vote for him, but it was, a strong movement. Obviously, won this past election, came into office really hot, and then, when these rumors start to circulate about him, really, going against the Constitution and having a third term, it ruins a lot of the more, constructive things that he and his administration are able to do and should be focused on, not on, there being a power grab. So if we're going to sit here and we're going to criticize Putin, for example, or Zelensky, we can't then, say, well, our own president wants to do power grab and go against the Constitution. So I'm glad he came out and put these rumors to rest and, threw out two really good names. I think both of them would be wonderful candidates and are doing great work. Marco Rubio, obviously a veteran, politician, he knows foreign policy inside and out. He's a very strong patriot, and has a lot of strong support. And obviously J.D. Vance, young and very passionate, loves America and is doing a great job as VP. So he put those two names out into the universe. So let's see what actually ends up happening.
The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit has granted a stay on a lower court's order that had mandated the reinstatement of over 100 or 1,000 Voice of America employees and the resumption of full broadcasting operations. Can you just give us a little bit of background information and explain this latest court decision for those who haven't been following this story?
Yeah, this is it's a difficult decision to make from the United States' point of view, from any citizens, tax-paying citizens' point of view. This is, the media that is supported by the United States government that is broadcast into different countries. The Trump administration came in under Kari Lake and said, you know what, there's a lot of mismanagement and a lot of money being wasted. They're in a multi-billion-dollar building and infrastructure, and with fountains and a lot of wasted money with extra personnel that are not doing anything. But on the other flip side, as a journalist, I will tell you a lot of the VOA, the Voice of America work that's being done and being broadcast into foreign countries does phenomenal work, does important work, and has important messaging to offer from and to deliver from the Trump administration or any American administration. The issue is that in previous administrations, Voice of America wasn't echoing the administration. They were doing their own job. They had, a lot of defectors. I don't know what else to call them, but people who really weren't on board with the White House's messaging and then working for the government. It just didn't make sense. So the old adage goes, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You want to maybe make some reforms, but not throw out the whole thing. So now the court is saying that this is an okay, kind of adjustment to make. But Kari Lake has come out and said, we will continue, but in our own way. So there will be major, modifications made where there's not going to be as much money wasted, and hopefully the messaging will be much stronger and more effective. That's all we want. We want this to work. We want it to be effective. We want taxpayers not to be ripped off, but we also do want to have that line of communication between the White House and other countries to be open and really to be efficient.
Now, very quickly, because we're almost out of time, something that just came down earlier today. The country of Rwanda is in the early stages of talks to receive immigrants deported from the United States. Now, the foreign minister for the country made the announcement late Sunday. Lisa, very quickly, why Rwanda?
Yeah, great question. Well, Rwanda's in talks with the United States over other issues. They have come to, have dialogue, and for that reason, the United States, again, under the Trump administration, it's believed that if you want to work with us, you have to work with us. So this is something that they've asked the Rwandan government. I think Marco Rubio went on record to say, if they're as far as possible from the border, they won't come back. So to put them just south of our border, we're going to have this issue continue. And if it's not Trump in office, it'll be a different president in office and perhaps won't be as tough on the border. So we want to actually solve this issue. If they want to be displaced, if they want to find new life, if they want to create, new energy, then perhaps going to a country like Rwanda that needs that new life and new energy. To your point, it's not it's not a choice that we would think would be, the usual choice. It's definitely out there. So I think this is something where he says, okay, you're coming to speak to us. We want this. We'll give you this, and there'll be a stronger relationship between the Rwandans and the Americans for that reason. So they're trying to work out a deal. This is only in the dialogue phase. They're just having a conversation right now. We haven't had any confirmations yet.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.